Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this is the fourth part of our investigation of the Satipatthana Sutta. And as you hopefully recall, there's four different themes in Satipatthana. So we covered the body contemplations, mindfulness of the body, you say, with its 5 different parts. We covered the feelings, contemplation of feelings, and contemplation of mind. Now we come to the fourth one, which has also 5 different parts to it. So the previous themes, basically, they are sort of like you'd say a progression in development, I would say. We start off with the body because the body is the coarsest, we would say, the coarsest theme, the coarsest object of mindfulness, slower to change. And then we move on to feelings, which are a little bit more subtle. But, one of the easiest ways for me anyway, to relate to feelings is through the body. There's sensation, and then there's a feeling with that sensation. When it comes to the mind many times is so quick to change that it's hard to actually observe what the original feeling was. You may have a feeling about a certain thought, and then that thought takes over. Then you have a feeling about that thought, and then and proliferation goes on. But just go back to the body, and then clunk. There's the body. It doesn't change so much. Well, slowly it does change, but not so fast. Then we come to the states of mind, which are a little bit more subtle, because it's even a little bit, I would say, not quite correct to say state of mind, because where's the state border? Where does one state of mind and the next one begin? It's more like there's a whole progression or a whole process of mental activity. But basically, if you try to be aware of what the prominent state of mind is, you might be able to notice there's one which has prominence, which is most obvious, which is most dominant in your mind. And so the Buddha gives us, these 16 states of mind as a sort of general overview of the possibilities of the mind anyway, from the so-called unskillful ones of greed and aversion and delusion to the more positive ones, like the liberated mind. Anybody notice that yet? Well, even momentarily it could be. No. Doesn't have to be not permanent, but at least for a moment anyway, your mind feels there's no greed, aversion, delusion. It's expansive or something, some kind of positive state of mind. But this is where also these different themes they don't supplant each other. It's like when you move on to feeling, being awareness of feelings, you don't drop the awareness of body. They support each other, complement each other actually. So it's hard to get some awareness, some clear awareness of, say, a feeling or a state of mind. You can still go back to the body. And human beings are body-mind. Sometimes the state of mind can be more expressive in the body, especially if we've already done quite a bit of practice with developing awareness of body, more sensitive to the bodily changes and expressions. Then you can maybe recognize, there's this feeling of heaviness in the body. Is that greed or aversion? It obviously isn't expansive, is it? Or if you're trying to recognize a contracted mind, look at the contracted body. Oh, the body is contracted. Probably that's an expression of the mind. And distracted likewise. Distracted in the sense of restlessness or something. And this is especially useful when we come to, well, in states of mind like the greed and aversion, as I mentioned, I think last time, that those negative states of mind, actually not so easy to observe, unless one has a very good grounding in awareness of breathing. And if one has a safe refuge, say, in being connected to the breathing, then one has a bit more confidence to look at some of these so-called negative states of mind, especially when it comes to the theme of hindrances, which is the next theme. That some of them are quite unpleasant to begin with. Some of them can be quite frightening even. I mean, something like aversion. I think a lot of people don't want to see they just don't want to see their aversion because it's too volatile. They could be frightened. It'll overwhelm them. They look at it too closely. But if you have a good connection to the breathing, you have a refuge to return to. If these negative states of mind become too overwhelming, too empowered, just go back to the breath, And you don't have to, you can use it in such a way, like observe the breathing as a form of that state of mind. Not to ignore it, not to get rid of it. Anger arises, look at the angry breathing. Okay? But you can look at it, it's like having a little bit of distance now. Not being right into it, not face to face with it, but you can look at it from an angle now. If you develop the awareness of body, you already have some, hopefully some clear understanding of how the body is. The body is responding to conditions. Yeah? So there's maybe a little bit more dispassion, a little bit more objectivity to it. First of all, if you observe the breathing, usually most people, it's still very subjective, very personal. Your mind gets confused. What am I doing? I'm watching my breathing. Okay, good boy. But then you keep observing the breathing, and then you notice, this breathing happens without me. Of course, I think I'm here, but the breathing goes on whether I want it to breathe or not. So you see a little bit more objectively. This breathing is happening, and you're the observer of it, rather than you being the breather. So then you begin to, from that point of view, you have a little bit more this mindfulness, observing it as a process happening. So when it comes to emotions, there's a little bit more identification, I would think. These are my emotions. I've been sorting them out my whole life. But you go back to the breathing, and there's the body breathing, and that kind of breathing must be how anger expresses itself in the body. Angry breathing now. So it's a little bit more, for me anyway, it's a little bit more safer to observe the angry breathing than it is to observe my anger. So if you have a very good relationship with the breathing, develop this awareness of breathing to a good enough degree, then it's right close to you, it's right near you. It's like a good friend sitting next to you, even holding your hand. So when you're looking at some of the unpleasant stuff, you can, if it gets too much, I talk to my friend, or get my friend to help me. Get the breathing to help me, awareness of breathing to help me, give me some support. And of course, one of the effects of concentration is that it does calm down the reactiveness. So it's a better possibility to observe the experience in itself, rather than all the things we add on to it. There's anger, then there's fear of the anger, then there's resentment to it, and then blah, 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 blah. Everybody has the story, And I guess the ones who have good stories, they're in Hollywood writing dramas now, or writing movies. being edited out.
No.
Hmm?
I'm just saying it was quite big. I was trying to get it smaller to see the.
Can be smaller.
I'm checking out the whole space.
Oh, okay. So I can't move my arms so much. So anyway, so especially when we come to the next theme anyway, the Dhammas, the hindrances. Yeah, this is really helpful to be able to have a good foundation in the practice already, so that one can observe these hindrances very, very clearly. Likewise, of course, states of mind. Observe them very clearly without getting lost in all our stories about them and our resistance, our like and dislike about them. So this is the next themes, I would say, are a little bit of a development, a refinement on the awareness of conditions of mind in specific categories. And you notice in the exercises for observing the states of mind, there's no mention about what to do with them, is there? Didn't say get rid of your greed. Didn't say develop the unsurpassed mind. It just said observe them. Just be aware of them, okay, and aware of arising factors and cessation factors. So you get very, very clear. Just it's like taking stock of your mind. Being very clear about it. Mindfulness, when it's developed, is just a non-judgmental awareness. Oh, this is there. This is the state of mind now. But then we come to the next theme of hindrances. The Buddha also includes the instructions now how to prevent it from arising, for example. So it's even more developed, you could say, in the instructions how to deal with them. So the fourth theme is called the Dhammas, and there's various opinions how to translate it. Sometimes they're translated as mental objects. I think I use phenomena, mental phenomena or something. But Dhammas are just things, general category of things. And the Dhamma with a capital D is the Buddha's teachings. So the Buddha's teachings, the Dhamma the Buddha teaches is all about things. Good things and bad things. There's to point out the skillful and the unskillful. But it's helpful to know the processes involved in them, you see. And we come to the first of the Dhammas. There's 5 themes in it. First one is the hindrances. And I don't know how much we want to go into the details. We can do a detailed analysis, or we can just skip over it a bit more quickly. Do you want to deal with hindrances, or
detail?
Do you want to just skip over them and forget about them and move on to the other good stuff? Like factors of awakening or something? Well, it just so happens there's this quite well-written book here by somebody called Ajahn Tiradhammo. It's easy for me to read the whole book out, but maybe too detailed for you. The other ones maybe I won't go into so much detail, but hindrances are very, well, I was going to say useful, but to know about the hindrances is very useful, because we all have to work with them, right, eventually. Some people, maybe they're still in the inspirational phase. Huh? Well, you all are professionals, right, so you've gone beyond inspiration now, right, but not to depression yet. Or you through that already, too. Many times it goes inspiration, then depression, and then you level out a bit. You become more sensible and realize not one extreme or the other. So anyway, but okay, detail.
I don't know about that.
Well, we'll start off anyway and just see if it's starting to get too bogged down in details. So, first of all, about hindrances, there's 2 different approaches to the hindrances, basically. The different ways you can approach it from the point of view of calm meditation or insight meditation. And the instructions the Buddha is giving in that sutta, of course, are about insight meditation. It's not just suppressing the hindrances temporarily to realize deeper states of concentration. The Buddha is encouraging us to study them, what they are, how they arise, how they cease, and how to prevent them from arising in future. So it's an approach, I would say, more aligned with what we call insight meditation. But most of the time in the scriptures, the hindrances are dealt with in relationship to the practice of samatha or calm meditation. That is, one has to, basically you suppress the hindrances to realize absorption, concentration. If your mind is distracted by hindrances, no concentration. So I would say that the general approach is to deal with them in some degree. You have to find a way to at least to reduce the power of some of the hindrances, and then through the power of concentration they get even more reduced. But the trouble is, the hindrances in concentration are just put to sleep. They're not actually transcended. They aren't actually gone beyond. They're just temporarily suppressed. So one realizes can develop concentration. One comes out of concentration and guess what? They're there again. Maybe somewhat attenuated, for at least temporarily, because of the power of concentration. And which can make the practice even more complicated, because some people who are good at concentration think they're over hindrances, think they're beyond them already, just in the power of concentration. Especially if they're quite good at it, they abide in equanimity and think, no problems, till somebody disturbs their meditation. And then they have a panic attack, or they get very angry. Or they're still very greedy for concentration or something and don't even recognize it. So the safest approach is, as I say, working with the hindrances. And even the word hindrance, in English anyway, is already a negative, isn't it? I mean, I thought to even change it somewhat, but it's been it's been defined in that context so often. And relatively speaking, they are hindrances. They are hindrances to meditation practice, either calm or insight, unless we transform our approach. And when we can work with the hindrances, I would say that these hindrances, most people, they want to get rid of them. Huh? Anybody like their hindrances? Occasionally, sense desire's nice. Occasionally. Anger, not so. Ill will, not so nice, is it? No, never. Sleepiness, well, maybe sometimes, especially when mosquitoes are buzzing around, it's okay to just doze off a little bit and ignore them, or dull the mosquito bites or something. But anyway, generally, most people don't like the hindrances, so they come from an attitude of trying to get rid of them, even unconsciously, which is not very helpful. But we got to work with that, you see. So what I see them as, these are expressions of our self. Self expresses itself through desire and aversion and blanking out and confusion, etc. So if you see it that way, then these hindrances can be a very helpful opening to the self and its secrets. If you can understand the nature of the hindrances, you understand the nature of how the self is working. That's what the cause of it is ultimately. It's the self in some form. And most of the time, the self is so hidden and so defended, it's hard to see it. But when there's a hindrance, you're exposing yourself. Just like I give the analogy. It's like a little warning light in your car, maybe. When the red light's blinking, something's wrong here. So if you pay attention to it, you can figure out what the problem is, and then you can resolve it. So a hindrance is like a little red light saying, your self is very active, with greed, with sensual desire or ill will or sleepiness too, restlessness, doubt. Your self is reacting. So if you can be conscious of that, be aware of that, and then investigate it, go back to its source, the possibility to disconnect that self from there, to resolve that self issue. And of course it works at different levels. I mean, there's different degrees of aversion, ill will, for example. But the more you can do that, the more you can see through and the different expressions of self. So ideally, these hindrances can be transformed into great wisdom. As I was saying previously, about, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I would think Ajahn Chah would say something like, if you got lots of hindrances, you got great fertilizer for practice, great fertilizer for wisdom there. It's just a matter of whether the Ajahn can tolerate you or not, that's all. Because I noticed in the monastery there are some people who, they can be, quite equanimous, quite easygoing, but don't seem to have any problems, you see. But not a lot of wisdom either. And there's those who can be very difficult but if they're willing to work with it, to learn from it, listen to advice, then they're open to progress. They're learning about themselves. There's others who have their problems and they're untrainable. So I think the Buddha talked about the different ways of training horses, I think, for example, There's those who will, they will react when there is some difficulty. There's others who are, no matter what you do, they just will follow their own moods and so untrainable. So anyway, that's what my approach is here, how to work with the hindrances. And there's, the various, let me see, how detailed you want it, Like I came across this myself many times, why only 5 hindrances? I can recognize 5,000 or something, 5 million. But if you look at, first of all, in the Buddha's time, they didn't have books as thick as this, you see. They didn't have any books at all. So they had to rely upon what they could remember. So 5 is an easy number, see. So if you're out in the forest and you haven't got your book there, and you think, what are the hindrances again? Oh yeah, there's these 1, 2, 3. There's sensual desire, there's ill will, sleepiness, restlessness, and there's doubt. Okay, I don't even need to write on my fingers, I can recognize that. That looks like a doubting finger. Maybe this one here. Depends on what your specialty is. What your special hindrance is, you see. But you can also look at them as the 5 basic energy dynamics, I would say. You figure that out, energy dynamics. There is sense desire is reaching out. Ill will is pushing away. Sleepiness and dullness is collapse. Restlessness is explosion outside. Distractedness and explosion. Doubt is paralysis. I don't know what to do. These are the kind of 5 basic energy responses of yourself. Basic. And then, of course, it is helpful that one has some degree of, calmness of mind, developing the awareness of breathing to a level where the mind is calm enough to not react to what we observe. Especially useful when it comes to the hindrances, because a lot of us just don't want to see them. You see. And they're in this sutta, they're referred to, as the subjects for mindfulness. Because mindfulness is probably the most useful tool to use with regard to hindrances, just to see them. And maybe you observed already when you can acknowledge, just be clearly aware of, say, even a negative state of mind, like aversion or something. Do you notice what happens to it?
Loses power.
Yeah. Just be aware of it. Oh, there's aversion. Where, I mean, all of us have had a long history of aversion. I mean, I'm not trying to, I admit, me too. Because it's not easy to deal with, and it's not socially correct. It's not socially correct to have aversion. To have sense desire and go shopping is wonderful. It keeps the economy going. But to have aversion is not politically, not socially correct. You see. So we've always been forced to, don't be angry, or, don't do that. So it's very hard to access it. But if we have more mindfulness, though, it's possible to just observe it without reactiveness around it. All the resistance and the shame and all the rest of it. I mean, we've been shamed so often by our parents and our teachers. Being angry. Oh, you're a bad person if you're angry. How about you? Were you ever angry? Yeah?
That's anger.
Yeah. And most people don't know how to deal with it, so it's pretty hard to handle. So but with mindfulness, we're able to just, the more mindfulness is developed, we're able to just observe it non-judgmentally. It's just like this. And of course, then possibly open up too, with where does it come from? And if your mind is not calm enough, when you're inquiring what's the cause of this hindrance, your mind spins off and, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, and maybe it's my karma. Buddhists will say, maybe it's my karma. It's my karma to be angry, Nothing you can do about it, it's just karma. But you can create more karma to deal with the bad karma. The previous, it's not karma actually, it's vipaka, it's results of your previous actions. So you can do new karma now to help to deal with that more skillfully. And then it's relating the hindrances, and then okay, another one, creative, skillful means. So the Buddha gives some basic practices to deal with the hindrances, but each person is somewhat different, and each hindrance has a certain different tone to it. Some maybe respond to some of these particular techniques or means the Buddha gave. For example, anger. The Buddha gives the main meditation theme for dealing with aversion, anger, is metta, friendliness. But maybe some forms of anger don't respond very well to it. And maybe some people can't respond to it either. Find it very, very difficult. I mean, I remember, teaching retreats in the West. This is the West, isn't it? I always think of Europe, but anyway. We're in the Far East, aren't we?
The Wild West.
Depends which side of the planet you're on. It's west from Canada, but it's east from Europe anyway. But I remember teaching retreats in Europe, and sometime when I explained about friendliness meditation, some people just were they were incredulous, we say. Just couldn't believe it. What? Be friendly to my aversion? What? Be friendly to the pain? There's one guy. He had young guy too. He had a motorcycle accident, so he had pins in his knees. He had these pins to hold his knees together, you see. And then when he tried to sit meditation, he couldn't do it. He had a lot of pain. So I said, "Oh, sit in a chair," And he said, "What? I'm a young guy. Look at these old ladies sitting on the floor. They're not going to out-sit me." And I said, "Just sit in the chair. You got a physical limitation." But he got so angry, he just was hitting his knees, And I said, try and be friendly to them. Try and be friendly to that pain. And he just couldn't understand. Be friendly to the pain? Are you kidding? So I just said, have you got a choice? And he just stopped it. So he didn't realize he got locked into this, hating himself for his, which wasn't even his body, but I didn't say you have to love it. I just say be friendly to it, you see. So in general, there are also quite a few what I call supportive conditions for dealing with the hindrances, especially. So there is the basic, and we're all been practicing for a long time, so we know the basics: generosity, morality. Generosity is very, very important because it's one of the most. The attitude of generosity is the most fundamental to spiritual practice. You say generosity, it's formalized in the monasteries with making offerings of food and support for the monastics. But generosity in its essence is learning to give up, surrender, relinquish, renunciation, giving up. Yeah. The one practice you could take to the very end is generosity in the form of renunciation, giving up. Just give up yourself. Got it? That's all you need to know. Yourself is the biggest problem. So if you just give that up, no problems. But who am I giving up? What am I giving up? And another one is the refuges. I mean, this is also something which in Asia, in a Buddhist country, is very well known. The refuges. They can refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. But in the West, where most of us are sort of conditioned to be independent, self-reliant, and do-it-yourself meditators, do-it-yourself enlightened people, enlightening and enlighteners or something. I have to look on the Bunnings page about that one. Do-it-yourself enlighteners. And it's very hard for us to ask for help, you see. But so the refuges can be very supportive if you look at them maybe a little bit more as sort of principles rather than we aren't taking refuge in the Buddha. The Buddha is, unfortunately, folks, the Buddha is not here. He's in Nibbana. So if you really want to be close to the Buddha, you got to get to Nibbana. Even then, I don't know if you're going to meet him or not, but.
Isn't it in his qualities then?
That's right, the principle of it. Yeah, the Buddha means the awakened one. So the principle of awakening. Take refuge in the principle of awakening. See? Even when we're having a hard time, a difficult time, we tend to take it, anyway, Western people, take it very personal. I can't do this, I'm not up to it, I guess maybe the Asians would say, and I don't have the karma for it. No barami or something or other. But if you can recognize, even I'm having a hard time, this is part of the process of awakening. And if you relate that, say, to the life of the Buddha, there's in some of the, at least the temples in Asia, Buddhist temples, they have pictures of the Buddhas fighting Mara or something. The scenes of the Buddha conquering Mara, fighting with Mara, and all the hordes of the armies of Mara, all kinds of things. I went to a temple outside of Bangkok, a new one. It was built, a modern one built more recently. And they had some famous Thai artist paint this, the Buddha's typical image of him sitting under the Bodhi tree fighting Mara. And these demons and all, they had M16s and bazookas and they didn't have spears and arrows anymore. And swords. They came in modern. They came well equipped now. And it struck me that there's this kind of typical imagery of the hordes of Mara having spears and arrows and all this kind of stuff, but it comes in many forms. And now it's taking a 21st century form, Mara. See? Internet addiction. You can say digital distraction or something or other. See? So the Buddha represents the possibility of awakening. The Dhamma is the truth, which is always here. Maybe you don't see it right now, but it's always here. The truth is always present. Just our eyes are obscured from seeing it right now. But any moment, you can see it, or have a glimpse anyway. The dust can be erased or fall away from your eyes. In the chanting, I don't know which one it is now. If you do, remember the chanting you do, the Dhamma is, akaliko, ehipasiko, opanayiko, leading onward, timeless,
Inwards.
Look, inward, onward, whatever. But one of them, akaliko, it literally means timeless. Kala is time, and means a no time, see. So in English, I think it's translated as timeless, which to me implies that it's always there, you see. But in the Thai translation, very different. And one morning at 4 a.m. in the morning, we're doing morning chanting and whatnot, and we do it in Thai, you see, Pali and Thai. And my mind was not so, so congested with English language. 4 a.m. in the morning, so just kind of listening to the Thai translation, and what? That's very different than what the English. In Thai, it says the Dhamma gives a result independent of time. Isn't that profound? So any moment the Dhamma can arise. Because the Dhamma is beyond time. It's not, most of us are thinking, okay, I practice today to get enlightened tomorrow, right? Right? Or maybe a bit longer, maybe next week. Yeah? Or next lifetime, okay. But no, the Dhamma can happen any time, any moment. Whenever there is mindfulness, wisdom, concentration, the Dhamma can arise.
When conditions are...
Yep, conditions are right for it. So it's not tomorrow, not next week, not 10 lifetimes away, any moment, you see. So that's the Dhamma, okay. And the Sangha is our spiritual friends, our supportive community of spiritual practitioners. So, even when, we're practicing in our own little hut somewhere, or under our own little tree, own little Bodhi tree, you're not alone. You're with a great company of other people who've been practicing for 2,500 years at least. See? So it's not all on your shoulders, and it's not all your problem. So you're part of a lineage of people. So it can be quite supportive to reflect on those refuges sometime, especially if you're having some challenges, and say, the Buddha's gone before me, and others have dealt with this too, and Dhamma's, where's Dhamma today? It's around here somewhere. And then we come to, I guess I can mention this in general, metta bhavana. Metta bhavana depends how we use it, but the way I usually explain it, it can be used in all situations, rather than, it's usually translated as loving kindness meditation, which I have a little bit of aversion to. But I'm working on it.
It's really a label, Ajahn.
Well, in at least my Sunday school lesson, there was one of the lessons I was taught from the Bible was love your neighbor as yourself. That was one of the teachings of Jesus, I think. Anyway, so then one day I realized I can't love my neighbor. I don't love my neighbor. They're really anyway. So I guess I can't be a Christian then. But so when I hear this loving kindness, to me it's just a bit too, and even the word love I think many times has been too idealized or too overused, So but friendliness, I realized, well, I can't be friendly to my neighbor. Loving them, sorry, I can't do that, but I can be friendly. It's possible. I can even be hospitable, maybe even welcoming sometime, put on a nice hospitality smile. Hospitality. Hospitality. That was a Freudian slip, that one. Yes. Hospitality. Smile. Be friendly to them, But loving, sorry, I mean, if I'm honest with myself, I can't be. But then if you look at that saying, love your neighbor as yourself. So the problem was, I couldn't love my neighbor because I can't love myself. Uh-huh. Yeah, eureka. And that's where the Buddha's teaching comes in, because first you spread metta to yourself. Ahang sakito homi, may I be well. When you begin to be more friendly, loving, if you like, towards yourself, it just spills over. So it's not being too idealistic. I got to love my neighbor first before I can love myself. It doesn't work that way. So, what is yourself? Sense, desire, ill will, not to. There is a positive part to you too. No, but this time it's expressed in these hindrances. So that's where you need to be more friendly to anything which you don't like. And that's the part of us that is most hidden, but has the most potential too, because unless you understand yourself in all of its various expressions, you can't be awakened to the truth. You see. I'm very eager to be aware of my wonderful qualities. Yeah, that's no problem. I can go on about that for a long time. But weaknesses, what? I don't know about that. That's very short. Short teaching, that one. So that's what needs the most attention, and needs the most attending to and friendliness towards. So developing friendliness meditation is not just spreading it, loving kindness all over the world, but trying to be friendly to yourself in its various manifestations. And the most obvious ones is the unpleasant ones. That's where you haven't been friendly. You haven't been friendly at all. So that needs the most work. So this is, when it's just being, and it can be expressed in different ways. It doesn't matter, not just in your head, but it can also, and it's not a matter of just trying to be loving to, but just being open to, receptive to, is being friendly. Receptive, open, to be welcoming even, maybe. Welcoming of the hindrances. Oh, what is this? Come on in and sit down, have a cup of tea. So we can talk about it. So it can be expressed in various ways, and to the extreme maybe. This is a very developed form, but when the metta is developed as one of the Brahma-viharas, divine abidings, the Buddha said it's measureless well-being, transcending all ill will. You can say it's unconditioned love, if you like. Anyway, it's the development of metta, friendliness. So not only for aversion, but for all of them can work well with. If you have trouble dealing with sleepiness, for example, try and be more friendly to it. Some people, they fight their sleepiness, which is more exhausting, and they get more tired. They're fighting with it all the time. They have a negative attitude. I shouldn't be sleepy. And just try and be more friendly to it. And I gotta, be friendly to your bent neck. And don't fight with it so much. It's not so exhausting. And maybe you can begin to understand. When you're friendly to something, then you begin to share, you begin to communicate when you're more friendly, right? If you think of a friend, it's somebody you can really communicate with easily, can't you? Sometimes you don't even need to talk. You just can commune in silence even, if it's really a close friend, real heart-to-heart connection. So likewise, with developing friendliness, it's a matter of being able to communicate when you relax your defensiveness, their guard and are more open to them, more receptive to them. And of course, maybe this is one of the most helpful ones too, is how to deal with distracting thoughts. There's a discourse in the Majjhima Nikaya also, in the same book, scripture that has the Satipatthana Sutta in it. Discourse number 20, dealing with distracting thoughts. So when we're watching the breath and the mind gets sidetracked into distracted by something, the Buddha gave 5 different methods to use. And the first one is to attend to a more wholesome topic. If your mind goes into a negative state or something, then it's better to bring up a more useful state. Now we already had some experience of being aware of, the greed, for example, and when there's no greed in the mind. Aversion, no aversion in the mind, right? So there's a possibility there, a more wholesome, recognizing the more wholesomeness of non-greed, non-aversion, non-delusion. If that doesn't help the mind become more steadied and concentrated, then one should examine the disadvantage in those unwholesome thoughts. What's the negative aspect of these distracted thoughts? What's the purpose of them? And the third one is we just try to ignore them. Just go back to the breath, back to the breath, back to the breath. And then the fourth method is to calm the thought construct. That means that, your mind is the particular thought you have in your mind has a certain energy to it. To try to calm that down, whatever that is. It said the image analogy the Buddha gave was just as someone who is walking fast would slow down, stand or sit, gradually assuming a more subtle posture. So your mind is really spun out. Sometimes these distracting thoughts are energizing, sometimes they're debilitating, right? So if they're energizing, try to calm them down. You can, even to the extent of slowing your breathing, for example. If you take slow breaths, you physically slow down the breathing, you slow down your mind too, mind process. If it's a debilitating state of mind or distracting or thought, you can speed it up. Even breathing faster or walking faster. So something like, I'll come to the more details, like sleepiness, for example, but in detail later. But the general principle is that. And the very last one is a little bit controversial, because the Buddha said to chase out the unwholesome thought, just as a strong man would constrain a weaker one. And interesting enough, the Buddha had done that practice before being enlightened. He realized that wasn't very helpful. So this is the fifth, this is a desperate attempt. Keep your mind calm. Temporarily. So as I say here, it's different thoughts require different methods. So it's important to apply each method with circumspection. So basically if your mind is calm enough, it depends on each person's, mental activity. My own approach is that, I'm observing the breathing, for example, and if a distracting thought arises, I just recognize, distracting thought, go back to the breathing. Comes up again, back to the breathing. Just like there's something annoying going on, well, don't pay attention to it. Back to the breathing, back to the breathing. It's really, of primal importance that the mind is calm, otherwise we just get spun off into our old reactive patterns again. Trying to get rid of it, trying to ignore it, trying to conquer it or something or other, not so helpful. Better to go back to calming the mind again, keeping the mind calm. After about 3 times, depending upon how distracting it is, after about 3 times, then I look at the distraction very clearly. Try and even maybe label it. What is this? and then maybe get a bit of clearer view of it, and then maybe it fades away. I mean, I see it a little bit like, you're doing something, and a child comes along and tap, tap, tap. You look at it, and it gets that look, it's gone. maybe it's persistent, tap, 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 tap. And then you could look at it, and what do you want? Then it's gone. Other than maybe the third time, if this keeps going on, it means it's got a lot of energy to it. So maybe it requires some closer investigation. What's this about? What's behind it? But it's still important to have a good foundation of calm, not to get too intellectual about it, try and figure it out, but from a place of calm, what's going on here? And then maybe you can recognize, this is something that's just got a much longer process to it. There's more to it. Like some of the things we first observe are not the real issue. There was somebody, I was in Canada, and I had a questions and answer session with some people who read my book. And I said in here that, the first stage of working with the hindrances is to be very clear and very, very clear and concise about what exactly the hindrance is. Because sometimes the first manifestation of it is not the real thing. It can come along and you think, that's greed or something. But maybe not. Look again. Be careful. Look at it very carefully first. So this person said, they observed that they had restlessness. So they looked in the book and found how to deal with restlessness. So they were working on it, and it just didn't go away. Didn't change. This is, back to the book again. So anyway, she came to the part, or she realized that she has to look more closely at, is this really restlessness? And then she got a bit of a shock, because she found out that it wasn't restlessness, it was anger, which made her restless. And restlessness is safer to observe than anger, you see. So when she saw the anger, that was the real issue. And then, now I got some work to do with that, So unless you're really clear what the real issue is, you're wasting your time trying to work on it. Being more careful, like opening to it, being more friendly to it, allows you to be more receptive and clear about it. It's not restlessness, it's anger. And of course, then you get to the real issue, even though it's more unpleasant. but now you can really do some honest, useful work on it, you see, because you found the real issue. So then sometimes these distracting thoughts, pay attention to them, try to investigate, but it's important to be able to do it from a place of calm. Maybe at first it's not really clear. It may take some going back to again. It may take some much more development of concentration and mindfulness to be able to see it more clearly. But maybe if you at least bring it into your field of attention, it maybe begins to kind of come into focus. What's really going on here? And then it began to be, at some time, you can't say when, just, that's what it is. Like in the case of this person, anger, that's what it really is. But by working with the restlessness, at least they were looking at it like the shadow of it or something. They're working on the shadow of it. And then if you follow it close enough, you find out what's making the shadow, you see. So I don't know, I need to talk about visions and unusual experiences. Time for a ghost story.
We had that
I
yesterday.
had it this morning.
We had it already. Okay.
This morning.
Ghosts. Huh? So another one is having some knowledge of the Buddha's teachings, because something like just knowing about the Eightfold Path, for example. We we come to practice meditation, most of us are be looking at it more as a psychological process, but perhaps recognizing there's 8 parts to the Eightfold Path. You know, maybe sometimes one needs to go back to right view again. If I got the right view, or is there, you know, maybe I'm looking at it from the point of view of trying to figure it out, but is there enough concentration, enough energy, you know, enough morality? You know?
I
Maybe
find that's very powerful.
reflecting on the
With
8 factors.
we chant,
Uh,
and then the Dhamma helps me
yeah.
to take away the hindrances very quickly.
Very quickly. Oh.
No, in the sense that
Yeah.
that focus
Yep.
brings focus.
Mhm.
So, whereas if I sit to concentrate, I cannot do it.
Mhm.
Really struggle.
And so many people they've learned meditation, at least in our, you know, modern context, just through meditation retreat. So they've got the instructions for the method, but don't know the bigger context of the Buddha's teaching as being a whole, you know, a whole tradition of spiritual development. So many different expressions, different techniques, different ways of approaching it. You know, supportive conditions maybe they need to work on. They're kind of, you know, kind of bashing away on their cushion to try and calm their mind, and they practice more generosity. It would work wonders for them, you know. But they're just working away at the technique. It's not providing maybe the right nourishment for a rounded spiritual practice then. You know. And then of course, this is another theme which comes later anyway. The Buddha mentioned specifically about the 5 hindrances as developing the 7 factors of awakening. Yeah. But I'll come to that later. Huh?
There's another book.
Another book, yes, yeah.
Written by Ajahn.
Very well remembered. I
Yeah.
think we know.
Yeah.
Ajahn Tiradhammo, maybe it's good idea to have more often to chant what we chanted last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Bojanga. Yeah.
No, with the Eightfold Path.
Oh.
And its depth.
Oh.
Like what does right view really mean?
Uh-huh.
And what does right letting go mean, renunciation really mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right view and
it's
yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're penetrating.
Mm-hmm. So another important one is the good friendship. As mentioned often, the Kalyanamitta.
In the morning.
Hey, we've been meditating.
Whoa.
All come here.
Suitable talk,
It's like
talking about the Dhamma, listening to Dhamma. Faith and trust. Humor.
oh, I love it.
Mainly, it's not just, you know, having a joke of the day or something, but this is like being able to laugh at yourself, I would say. Not taking yourself so seriously. You know, so you can laugh at your foibles and your weaknesses and mistakes and things. But if you take it too seriously, then, you know, it can be very depressing, you know. We're all imperfect, you know, and so better laugh at it than cry over it, you know. And then, of course, the one which is probably emphasized the most in the Thai forest tradition is khanti, perseverance, patience, and commitment. Actually, I call it patient perseverance and commitment. Usually in the Thai forest tradition, they say more like ot ton, just endure. Yeah, ot ton, but it means it doesn't come across so well in English to endure. You know, and it's a bit, I say, kind of pig-headed. You know, just to endure, just sit there and grit your teeth and bear it. But I think more important for modern time is commitment, perseverance, keep going with it. Because we have so many things, you know, instant food, you know, instant things, instant satisfaction, but so we want instant results. But it's not how spiritual practice works.
Ego gratification.
Yeah, and it needs the long-term perspective, the long-term view. So you got to have some commitment or perseverance just to keep going with it, and gradually the practice gains momentum. Then you begin to see results. Yeah, and then it also, you know, these qualities get strengthened with perseverance. It's just like trying to do some physical exercise. It takes a while to build up the strength physically, and then meditation mentally as well. It doesn't happen overnight. But most of us are also kind of conditioned for instant results. I want it right now. And if this doesn't work, I'll try something else. So I keep hopping around and trying different methods. And really, somewhere I read some psychological study about meditation, and they found that generally speaking, it didn't matter what technique people did, as long as they kept with it. Consistency, yeah. They can do, there's all kinds of varieties of meditation, different techniques, using the breath, using different mantras and all this kind of stuff. It didn't matter really what they did, but the results came when people kept with it. So the continuity was most important. Because it actually, when you do meditation practice, the more you do, the more it actually changes your brain function. So you need to do a minimum of 10 minutes a day for seven weeks. Well, 8 hours maybe.
Yeah, but half the time you're asleep. I'm talking for
But a minimum of 10 minutes a day, they find.
Yeah.
A minimum, 10 minutes a day, every day for 7 weeks. And your brain changes. Yeah.
Really?
I came across a program on an in-flight, on a flight somewhere to Bangkok.
3 months, what's the result supposed to be?
Enlightenment.
Insanity.
Yeah.
But when you mean 10 minutes of real concentration?
No, it doesn't have to be. No. It's, I came across a program by the BBC on a flight somewhere about this guy who it was sort of like he must have been have some kind of regular program on the BBC. So this was, he was dealing with his insomnia or something or other, his depression or insomnia. And so you try different techniques, he said. And one of them was mindfulness meditation. And he went to a lecture, and this ex-Buddhist monk, lots of them around these days, they gotta find a job, said to him, if you just do 10 minutes a day, for every day for 7 weeks, then you get some results. And this guy said, you gotta be kidding. He's playing the kind of, the actor in the film, so he said, he kind of devil's advocate thing, You can't tell me that I've been depressed for 50 years, I'm gonna cure it in 7 weeks. The guy said, yes. I challenged him, he said, try it. So before starting this course, he went to a hospital and got a brain scan. And the doctor looking at it, looked at the screen, and she said, oh my goodness, he said, oh, you do have a lot of negative thoughts, she said. He started looking at the screen, you see. Because, I don't want to get into the details, but depending upon the activity in your cerebral cortex, is it the left side is energized, you're happier, the right side is energized, you're more depressed or something. Anyway, she just looked at it and said, oh my goodness. You could tell the guy wasn't very happy. Anyway, he did this, she has a picture of him showing him sitting on his couch, watching his breath. But he kept it up for 10 minutes a day for 7 weeks. Went back to the hospital, got a brain scan, and it was exactly the opposite.
He must be in a good place. I said that too.
And the doctor said, that's from doing meditation, And the guy says, yeah, I even feel better too. I mean, he's so disembodied, he needs a brain scan to tell him he's feeling better.
That's a scientific proof.
Yes, yeah. Don't believe your feelings, you gotta believe them. Yeah, oh yes, yeah. He's scanning your brain once a week, isn't it?
That's right.
One person will be full. Like right now we are so busy with the scan. There'll be tons of people pouring in.
So I didn't get around even to the hindrances yet, but next week, keep rereading the same passage.
It's a big topic though.
Yes, it is, yeah.
But you see,
And I'm sure you have a question.
Now you're jumping in her.
Not about yet
You don't?
today.
No? Look like you're ready to speak there. No?
It would be in skeptical doubt, but if we're doing Hindus next week.
Yes, yeah.
The question would be, what was the Buddha's? Did the Buddha have anything specific to skeptical doubt or something?
Yes.
And skeptical doubt is in self-doubt, not skeptical doubt is in doubt.
Mhm. Yeah.
That
Can you wait for 5 weeks till I get to skeptical doubt?
Yeah.
Look at it first. Look at it. Study skeptical doubt. Well, you might have the answers by then.
Sorry?
You might have the answers by then.
Yeah, maybe.
If you're studying skeptical doubt for 5 weeks, yeah. Then you won't doubt anymore. You'll know all about it. Yeah.
So are we doing 100?
I don't know. The rate I'm going now, I haven't even got to 1 yet.
That'd be cool.
This is a day after the all-night sitting, so maybe our minds are working a bit slower.
Yeah.
Even though I think there's a progression in the hindrances too, like there's sense desire is probably the most prominent one, then ill will, and then sleepiness, and then restlessness and doubt. But I found out that at the end, I was working through them, and I thought, okay, doubt is at the end, so probably it's an easy one, you see. Took me 6 months to write that chapter. I was lost in doubt for
What doubt is that? What do you mean by doubt?
Yes, that's why I had to. I don't know. See, that's why I had to figure it out. Yes, yeah.
Doubt about the Dhamma or what? Or yourself?
Uh,
I don't know.
wait for 5 weeks. I think. So the first ones are, I don't know, they're not easy to deal with, but they're easy to talk about. But doubt was a difficult one anyway. For me anyway. In the Buddhist time, the doubt was very simple. Just doubting the Buddha teachings. But these days, doubt is a lot more. There's self-doubt,